through Saturday's front pages. Joining us this morning, the broadcaster and journalist Afua Hagan, and the journalist and author Gemma Forte. Happy weekend, ladies. I do hope you're well. Gemma, let's come to you first in a story which, frankly, I think is going to run all the way into next week. Rishi Sunak, according to the Eye, fighting for his political survival.
That's right, and as you say, I went to bed last night with a pretty good idea of what was going to be dominating the front pages, and sure enough, Rishi Sunak is splashed all over them. This, of course, is all about the fact that his wife has come, well, we've discovered that she's what's known as a non-dom, so of course this affects how much tax she pays to the UK, but not just that. We've also discovered that he's had green card status whilst being Chancellor, so being non-dom, for instance, the tax that they've paid is legal, but is it ethical? It raises so many questions. But this comes off the back, of course, of his spring statement, his mini budget, as it were, which I think, by and large, went down very, very badly. We've got tax increases. We all know we've got this cost of living crisis. And there was much more that he could have done to protect the poorest in society. So I think what's happened is, you know, he was prime minister in waiting, I think, to many, and his popularity has just plummeted. And it's not as simple as, well, he was giving out money and now he's taking it away. I really do think it's more nuanced than that. I think this makes people reflect inwardly. And for instance, people on universal credit, that £20 temporary uplift has gone. Everything is more expensive, and they're thinking, well, I can't ring fence that £20, but his wife can filter off all this wealth and pay less tax. So it's the fairness, it's the ethics, it's the morality that's a question here.
Afua, as you take us to the front of the Daily Telegraph, and of course they're focusing on Rishi Sunak's wife, you know, agreeing to pay, you know, what many people would suggest she actually owes here in the United Kingdom. There have been various points this week where I have felt like I am taking crazy pills. Largely, you know, when people have suggested that the tax status of the wife of the Chancellor of the Exchequer is not something that people should be concerned about. I mean, this story here, I mean, she herself admits it. She doesn't want to be a distraction. She may think she's doing nothing wrong, but she clearly recognises that others don't agree with her.
And she would be absolutely right. Whilst nothing that Shaka Murty is doing is illegal per se, it isn't fair. And like Gemma so rightly said, on the back of this spring statement, when things are getting so much harder for so many people, and then you have the Chancellor and his wife seemingly leading the life of the super rich, paying thousands in tax when probably, or his wife paying thousands in tax when in fact she should be paying millions, him having this green card status, and a lot of people will be thinking to themselves, well, hold on, it seems like he is completely out of touch. How can he be making decisions about how much money normal people should have, you know, the everyday people should have, how much benefit people should have, along with the cost of living crisis, the rise in energy prices, and things that clearly don't affect them, that they're not worried about, because like you said, they're paying thousands in tax when they should be paying millions. So of course it's relevant. Like I said, it's not illegal, but like Murty said herself, she said she wants to start paying the right amount of tax because of the British sense of fairness. I don't think it's necessarily about the British sense of fairness. It's about fairness across the board. That look, if you are making millions, make sure that you pay the appropriate amount of tax. And you know, it's not just about necessarily her tax status. We've also had the controversy around her company and the link to Russia and everything else. And it kind of just seems like Rishi Sunak being on the front pages for 1 or 2 days in a row with this level of bad news, it's not looking good for him at all. He is saying that this is a smear campaign, but you know, whether that remains to be true or not, we're finding out things about him and his financial status that we just don't like.
My bet, it's the green card that's going to come back and bite him in the backside next week. The idea that an elected representative, an elected politician, let alone one who's holding one of the great offices of state, holds on to a green card, there will be questions on that. But Gemma, take us to the front of the Weekend Financial Times, and an absolutely horrific story to add to a litany of horrific stories emerging from Ukraine.
That's right. It's absolutely sickening. There really aren't adjectives to describe the horrors that we're seeing in Ukraine. This latest act of terror sees 50 dead after the Russians hit a railway station in a town in Ukraine with missiles. 50 dead, including 5 children. It's just absolutely unconscionable. And quite rightly, Zelensky himself has said that evil has no bounds. And world leaders completely agree. There has been, the EU have come together to send more weapons. Olaf Scholz and Boris Johnson had their conference yesterday. The Brits are upping the ante as well. More money, more backing, more military help. And I don't think there's a person in the UK who wouldn't agree that that is the right thing to do. The scenes are something out of a horror film. And what's happened now is there's this horrible sort of sinister quiet period where the Russian troops seem to have withdrawn from major cities at the moment. And then it's the quiet before the storm. What comes next? Are they withdrawing because they are regrouping, as it were? So just horrendous. And how long will this go on for? How does it end? Nobody knows the answer.
Afua, I mean, the Guardian's treatment of the story, it's the picture on the front page that grabs me. And as it always does on events like this, you can see a pram sitting there. You can see children's backpacks, the owners, never coming to collect it. But as we saw when we Mark Austin interviewed Vladimir Putin's spokesman this week, the Russian answer at every turn in all of this is nothing to do with us. When they, in the face of evidence, are saying nothing to do with us, aren't we edging closer to a point where the international community genuinely has to intervene on humanitarian grounds, because we're going to see this time and time again?
We are getting closer and closer to that point, aren't we? Where there is going to have to be some sort of intervention, because the attack on Kramatorsk, this train station in the east of the city, is even more brutal because it was people trying to escape Putin's war, people trying to get the hell out of the way. And that's where they were struck with a missile that had written on the side of it, "For the children." I mean, it's just chilling. It's so horrifying. And we are reaching a point where we're hearing more and more of these, what can only be described as atrocities. Look what's happening in the towns around Kiev, where you're finding bodies with so much evidence of war crimes happening. And how long actually are we in the international community going to sit back? We're going to send weapons, we're going to encourage refugees to come here, but there is going to be a point where I think we're all going to have to sit down, all the international community, the EU, the UK, the US, and say, actually, we need to do more, because the stories that are coming out of Ukraine at the moment are absolutely horrendous. How much more horrendous are they going to get before we up the ante? However, what is upping the ante? What are we talking about? Are we talking about a no-fly zone? Are we talking about boots on the ground? Can that mean that we are engaging Russia in a war? And that's obviously something that we want to avoid. But on the flip side, do we just keep carrying on sending our commiserations whilst people are dying in these atrocities?
Afua, Gemma, we will leave it there and we'll talk about the Queen next. For now, though, thank you both very much indeed. Just a little bit of breaking news as we edge towards the end of the hour. Ukraine's Deputy Prime Minister has said those humanitarian corridors we were talking about yesterday, well, they have been agreed for Saturday. The planned corridors include one for people leaving Mariupol by private transport. The reason, well, frankly, there's nothing inside there apart from private transport. They're certainly not going to be sending in the military to bring them out. People will be keeping fingers crossed that those humanitarian corridors will be up and running very, very soon indeed. After the break, the very latest on the war in Ukraine.